Well, hello friends, this is David Bose. Today is May 10th, 2015. It's great to see everybody today. Well, friends, um, up to now we've been doing a lot of studying in the scriptures and uh, learning about the church and mysteries and, the law and all kinds of things. Today I've got a very interesting approach to this, and I would like to read a little bit from the Bible, not really verbatim. I'm going to kind of put it in a paraphrase. I may read some of it and I may paraphrase a little of it, because if I started reading all this I want to cover and I just read it, it would take quite a while. So I'm going to kind of skip over parts, paraphrase a lot of it, but it's not, it's not a problem, because I'm not trying to represent this as word for word right out of your Bible, but I do want to get the idea. I want you to kind of get an idea, because that's the problem. A lot of you Christians, you have your Old Testament and you believe in it because you're told that's God's word, and you really haven't read it because it's a lot of words. And if you did read it, your eyes would glaze over and you probably wouldn't pick up on all of it. If you read something that you didn't like or sounded a little odd, you wouldn't even notice. If it said that and the God Yahweh killed 1,000 people and he hated them all, and if it said something like that, you wouldn't even bat an eyelash, because you're trained that there's a reason for his wrath and there's a reason why he said that, and so you just kind of skip over things like that. And the translations probably help that out a little bit as well. So let me just read a little bit of this, friends, and see what you think. And I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit. And this is in Exodus chapter 20. I'm going to start there, and it says something like this. So God says these words: do this, don't do that, absolutely do not do that, by no means do this, you must not do this, and if you do, I will destroy you. And if you do this, you will die an excruciating death, and I will demand that all the people come out, and they will stone you in front of everybody. They will humiliate you. Okay, because I am God, and there is absolutely nobody else but me who is God. And I want you to get that point right through your head. I am God, and I am jealous, and I'm demanding that you keep all my laws. Okay? So, you got that? Now, the people were seeing this. There were thunders, lightning flashes, the sound of a horn, and the mountain was smoking. And when the people saw it, they shook, they quivered in fear, and they stood back at a distance. And then they said to Moses, "Oh, Moses, we don't want to talk to this God. Who is this God? We would like to talk to you, Moses, not to God." Well, Moses said, "Hey, don't be afraid. Because it's for your sake of putting you to the test. God is just testing you. Okay? God has come down in this manner to test you. And in order that the fear of him may continue before him." So the people kept standing at a distance, and Moses went near into the dark cloud, and that was where God was, Elohim. And so Yahweh went on to say to Moses, "This is what you're going to say to these people. And you're going to make an altar for me. And then I want you to sacrifice animals on this thing. And if you do something wrong, then you just make a sacrifice, and that smell of that burning flesh will go up into my nostrils, and the smell of the sacrificial smoke and the odor in my nostrils will make it all okay." because the smell of burning dead animals is a restful odor in my nostrils. So you're going to cut these animals up the way I tell you to, and then I want you to put the blood in a big bucket. So then I want you to take some of this blood and rub it on your face, pour it down your garments, and then sprinkle it all over the people. Put that blood on them. And then if you do this, I'm going to bless you. And you need to make this altar out of stones. Now I don't want you to profane it. Okay, this is a holy altar where you're gonna cut these animals up and then pour the blood on you. And then you're going to take some of the blood and you're going to take it into my holy temple. Now, these are some of my other decisions that I've made, some of my judgments. Okay, now I've given you 10 commandments. Now this is the 11th commandment. I want you to take and purchase slaves, and they're going to work for you. But if they're Hebrews, they only can work 6 years, and then you got to let them go. All right. Now your women, you can sell them. All right. You can make quite a bit off of them. If you sell your daughter, she's got to be a slave forever and ever and ever, because women cannot be free. This will be the law to time indefinite. All women will be slaves, and you'll purchase them. All right? You'll sell them for money. You sell your daughter as a slave, and then you put a ring right on her finger or in her ear. That way you know she's permanently your slave. Okay, I've got a lot of other laws, and I'm going to go on and on and on and on for pages, and I'm going to tell you many of these laws. Most of them are just about slavery, sacrifices, and all kinds of stuff. So, I'm going to tell you exactly how I'm going to do all the sacrifices, certain ways that I want you to cut the animals up, and I want you to sprinkle the blood a certain way. And then it says, I'm going to send an angel ahead of you. And he's going to keep you in the right path. And now I want you to be very careful, because you need to obey him. All right, everything he tells you, this angel, this messenger from me, he's going to go with you. Now you need to be very careful, because if you rebel against him, he's not going to pardon you. He will wipe you out. He will make you obey. So you better be careful now. If you do everything I say through him, then I'm going to be very hostile to the enemies. To your enemies, I will harass those who harass you. Okay, they harass you, I'm going to harass them. Okay, if they bully you, I'm going to bully them. And here's some of the nations that I'm going to just wipe off the face of the earth: the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Jebusites, and on and on. Now, I don't want you to bow down to their gods. And this is because I'm very jealous. Okay, in fact, that's my name. My name is jealous. So you just remember that. If you ever bow down to anybody else's gods except for me, I'm going to wipe you out. Now, all those nations I just got through mentioning, we're going to kill them. Every man, woman, and child. You're not allowed to even let, even their dog live. All right, but then there's another list of nations that, what I'm going to have you do is you're going to go in there, you're going to kill the men, all right, but then you're going to keep the women. You just, you shave them, shave their heads, and they're going to, let them cry and mourn and everything. They're going to mourn their husband's loss and so forth. You give them 30 days, that should be good, and then you can have them. All right, now if they fight you and they try to fight you off and they don't want you, that's okay. It is not rape, because I have given you their wives. And you take them, and I'm going to give you the spoil. All right? Take them. Take the whole darn bunch of them. You will without fail throw them down, and you will without fail break down their sacred pillars. Okay? I shall send fear of me ahead of you. I'll throw them into confusion, all the people whom you come to. I will give you the back of their necks. All right now? I will send a feeling of dejection ahead of you. It will simply drive these people out of your way. So little by little, I'm going to drive them out, and you're going to take the land. You're going to steal it from them. I'm going to fix your boundary from the Red Sea to the Philistines, from the wilderness to the river, because I'm going to give you all this land. All right now? And to Moses, God said, I want you and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and all the elders, I want you to go down there. And I want Moses to come up to me by himself. And Moses came and he told the people all the words that God had said. So Moses wrote down the words, and he got up early in the morning, and he built at the foot of the mountain this altar. He made 12 pillars. That represented the 12 tribes. And then Moses sacrificed a big cow, and he made some other sacrifices. Probably took him all day cutting these cows up and making these sacrifices. So then Moses took half the blood. All right, he made sure that when he cut these cows, he drained the blood into a bucket. He took half the blood and he poured it all over the altar. Then he took the other half of the blood, he poured it all over the covenant, the 10 Commandments. That rock, that everybody believes in today. He poured it all over it, so it was just drenched in blood. And then he read it so everybody could hear it. And he says, now, come over here, people. And he took the rest of the blood and he poured it all over the people. Because he saved a little bit in a little bucket so he could sprinkle it all over them and they could have blood on them too. He said, now here is the blood of this covenant. And this Yahweh, he's making this covenant with you. And so Moses and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and the 70 of the older men, they got to see this God, the God of Israel. And they saw that under his feet, it looked like sapphire. Maybe it was some kind of a spaceship. I don't know, because it was all glowing like gold, and they seen it hovering and lights and a pillar of light shining in the daytime and a fire at night. And so then Jehovah said to Moses, come on up here into the mountain. I want to give you this covenant, this stone tablet that I wrote on. All right, now, I wrote on this thing with my own finger. This is holy. So Moses and Joshua, his minister, got up and they went up to the mountain. And the older men, they waited. So when Moses went up into the mountain, there was a cloud that was covering the entire mountain, this dark cloud. And Jehovah's glory, this huge light, they couldn't even look at it. It was like a big old spaceship. And it was residing on Mount Sinai. Well, this big dark cloud, it just stayed up there for 6 days. All right, 6 days. And at the 7th day, here comes Moses right out of this dark cloud. They didn't even know, they couldn't see anything, because at the top of the mountain, it was just covered with a cloud. Finally, and then of course it was bright all around. So Moses entered into the midst of the cloud, and he'd go up, and then he'd come back out. And he continued on doing this for 40 days. Of course, he kept going in and out, and he hadn't eaten anything. And the people were like, this guy has been up there 40 days twice, so that's like 80 days, so it's impossible for him to still be alive. He's not eating something. So, maybe he's eating something up in there in that cloud. Maybe he's got something up there to eat. Maybe God's feeding him up there. Okay, then in Exodus 25, it says that this Yahweh proceeded to speak to Moses. He said, speak to the sons of Israel, and I want them to take up a contribution for me. Okay, from every man whose heart incites him, you people are to take up the contribution. And this is what you're going to do. I want you to get all the silver and all the gold, because that's mine. I want the blue thread, the wool, the reddish purple, the caucus scarlet material, the fine linen, all the goat's hair, the ram skins, the seal skins. Okay? All the lamps, the balsam oil, the perfumed incense, the onyx stones, all this stuff, and I want you to bring it up here. And they're going to make me a sanctuary. All right, now, you got to do everything I tell you to do. And then they're going to make this holy ark. It's going to be so and so, and it's going to be so long and so big. And you're going to overlay it with gold inside and out. It's going to have 2 rings, and then you're going to do this and that. All right, now. Then I'm going to have you make this cow. It's going to have wings. And that's going to be sitting right on top of that in the most holy place. And I want the high priest to go on there and pour blood all over it every year and bow down to this cow. All right? Because my presence is going to be around this cow. Well, and of course, cow or bull is where you get the name El. That's my name. It's one of my names. So Yahweh continues to tell Moses all the particulars, how he wants everything built, all the measurements and the pattern that he wants. It's got to be done according to the pattern. He went on and told them how to do all this and where they were going to put the blood and how they were going to make these animals in there, and they were going to be holy, and it was going to be this holy sanctuary. Well, while this is going on, the people are still down at the bottom of the mountain. And it says they got to see that Moses was taking a long time. So they congregated themselves around Aaron, and they said, "Hey, Aaron, why don't you make us a god? Because we don't know what happened to this Moses." So Aaron said, "All right, give me all your gold. All right? Everybody, give me all your gold." So they start ripping off all their gold and handing it, and they had piles and piles of gold. So then he took the gold from their hands, and he took a graving tool, and he proceeded to make from this gold a cow. And he began to say, "This is your God. This is who we worship, this cow." So Aaron got to see this, and he went and built an altar for the cow. He said, "This is great. I'm just the priest of Moses. I don't know any better. I mean, Moses already told us that we're going to have cows in there. We're going to put blood on it. So, I suppose this is what we're supposed to do, worship cows, right?" So Aaron makes the cow, and the next day, he says, "Now, God's already told us that tomorrow's a festival, one of the feast days. It's a holy feast day. So we'll worship the cow tomorrow." So the next day, they got up real early, and they began to make more sacrifices and cut some more cows up and pour out the blood and pour it all over the people. But Yahweh said to Moses, "Go down the mountain, Moses. Those people you brought up out of Egypt," that's what he called them. He didn't call them Israel. He says, "Those people you brought up out of Egypt?" He says, "They're acting awful. I don't like them." "Well, what's wrong?" Moses says. "Well, they've gone in a wrong path. They're sinning. And what they've done is they've made this cow. And now they're bowing to this cow. And I'm jealous because, you see, I want them to bow to me." Well, then he told Moses, "You know what? These people are stiff-necked and stubborn. I don't even like them. I can't stand these people. I think I'm going to kill them all." And he says, "My anger is I am so angry. My anger is blazing. I mean, I'm hot. I'm really mad. I just got wrath. I mean, you just stand back, Moses. Man, I'm so mad. I'm gonna kill every last one. How dare they make their own cow and bow down to it? I already told them how to make this cow and where to put it and where to put all the blood and how to kill the animals. And now, instead of doing it the way I told them, they're down there and they made their own cow." So Moses, he says to this God, he says, "Oh God, I want to soften your face. Oh, listen to me. Please don't be angry. I'm just a human being, but I've got more compassion than you do." Because God, he's just angry. And so Moses, he calmed him down. He says, "Oh, calm down. Angry God in the spaceship. Calm down." And he said, "You're going to look bad if you kill them all. You just brought them out of Egypt, and everybody thinks that they're your people. And now you're going to kill them all? Now think about this, God. I know you're not too smart, and I'm Moses, and I'm a little smarter than you are. So I'm trying to explain this to you. It's not going to look good. So God says, maybe you're right, Moses. I don't know. So, and then Moses, yeah, but remember also, they're going to say, hey, isn't he the true God? Well, why is the true God taking his people and killing them all? And you're the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? So, you don't want to be killing people now, right? I mean, that won't look good. So he says, all right. So then it says Jehovah got sorry. He was sorry. He felt regret. He said, oh, what have I done? I'm the true God, the most powerful being in all the universe. And I don't make mistakes, and there's no darkness in union with me, but I made a mistake. I'm sorry. And I feel regret that I've done this. So he says, Moses took the law and says, don't worry about it, God, I'll fix it. So Moses took the law and he went down the mountain. And they were in his hand. And he got to the bottom of the mountain and he heard them dancing down there, It was a festival. God had told them they got to keep a festival and dance. Well, now they're dancing, but, they shouldn't be dancing right now because, God's mad. So he says, he gets down there and he sees the cow that they made and he just busts the law and busts it all up. Covenant's gone, broken. There's no more covenant. If the children of Israel ever promised to keep that covenant, well, they don't have to now because God broke the covenant. Well, anyway, friends, I could go on and on and on reading all of this, and I think you get my point. So we have to ask ourselves, when we go to the New Testament, and Jesus says that nobody has ever seen God at any time. Never. I mean, it doesn't take a genius. We've got to understand this. The true and living Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, nobody has ever seen him. So that angel that was in the bush was not the true and living Father of heaven and earth, friend. Now, we know that Paul says that it was an administration of angels that gave the law. Now, I want to read something here to you. All right, this is in Acts chapter 7 and verse 30 through, 50 or something. And it says this. So 40 years were fulfilled, and there appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai an angel. And this angel appears in a flame of fire in a bush. Now, when Moses saw the sight, as he approached this bush that was burning to investigate, well, it says the Lord's voice came out. That was probably Yahweh, because that's what it says in Exodus. And this God, Yahweh, says, I am God, the God of your forefathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses was seized with trembling, and he didn't dare investigate any further. So Jehovah said, or the Lord said, take the sandals off your feet, for that place on which you stand is holy. You need to get down and bow because I am Yahweh. Now this is in Acts chapter 7, friends. And so he says, I, Yahweh, I have certainly seen the wrongful treatment of my people in Egypt. I've heard their crying, and I've come down to deliver them. Now come, and I will send you off to Egypt. This Moses, whom they disowned, sang, who appointed you ruler and judge? This man is the one God sent off, both as the ruler and as the deliverer, and by the hand of that angel that appeared to him in that bush. This man led them out, and he did portents and signs in Egypt, and in the Red Sea, and in the wilderness for 40 years. This is that Moses that said to the sons of Israel, God will raise up for you from among your brothers a prophet like me. This is he that came to be among the congregation in the wilderness with the angel that spoke to them at Mount Sinai with our forefathers. He is the one that received the living sacred pronouncements, the oracles. Those are the 10 Commandments written by God's finger, by Yahweh's finger, spoken right out of heaven, and it's from a dark cloud. That covenant that was done away, according to Paul, that was given by this angel that it's talking about here. This Yahweh, this angel Yahweh. And this angel Yahweh gives them these oracles, these living oracles. And it was to him our forefathers refused to become obedient. It was to that Yahweh. They thrust him aside, and their hearts turned back to Egypt, saying to Aaron, "Make gods for us to go ahead of us. For this Moses, who led us from the land of Egypt, we don't know where he went and what's happened to him." So they made a cow, and in those days they brought up a sacrifice to this idol. And then they began to enjoy themselves and the works of their hands. So God turned and handed them over to render sacred worship to the army and the hosts of heaven, just as it is written in the book of the prophets, "It was not to me that you offered these victims and sacrifices for 40 years, O house of Israel." Did you hear that, friends? It was not to God that they offered their sacrifices. And I know a lot of you say, "Oh, well, that's because they went off into pagan worship and so forth." No, he's talking about during those 40 years. Okay, they were under a strict guidance of Moses during that time. So everything that they were doing was not worshiping God. God had abandoned them and allowed them the religion of this Yahweh. See, that's what it's talking about. See, our Father in heaven abandoned them to Yahweh, to the angel of Yahweh, to do these sacrifices and to have all of this typical religion that's in patterns, this matrix, that's not really the true religion. Okay, they did this during the wilderness with Moses. Moses was there the whole time. Okay, this is stuff that Moses was giving them. That was false worship. And it continues on, and it says that the God they worshipped was not the Father in heaven, but he calls him Molech. That's another one of these ancient words that means this bull god, the cow. And so he says, "But it was to Molech and to the star of the god Rephan that you took up these sacrifices, the figures to which you made worship. Consequently, I will deport you beyond Babylon." You know, friends, Molech was represented as a cow. You see, the children. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, "Oh, Dave, you're so blasphemous. Why are you reading it like that?" Well, friends, that's what it says. I'm just, I may be using a little theatrics or a little bit, maybe, but friends, that's what it says. This God had a lot of anger. He was really, really mad. He told them to put a cow, a cherub with wings, in the most holy place and to sprinkle blood on it and bow down to it. Well, friends, we've talked about this over and over again in all my videos, how this cherub with 4 faces, it was like a bull and had a face of a man, and it was parts of it were like a lion, had wings. This is the astrological 4 zodiacal points. This is astrology. Okay, you can't mistake this. So why would God be putting astrology in the most holy of his temple? It's not God, friends. This is a lower priesthood. This is the angelic hosts. This is the astral forces of Satan. This is the god Enki and the god Enlil. You see, these were the angels that fell. And these were the ones that God placed on the earth. And this was the administration of the angels. And they have their administration throughout the universe. They're very powerful, friends. They run and control, and they are the God of this world, and they run this world right now. That's those astrological forces, friends, that rule over the earth. It's talked about in the book of Job. Friends, there's obviously something going on here. Okay, I'm not going to go any further with this, but I'm going to say it this way. Let me just explain something. All of you can at least, if any of you who believed in this Old Testament and that this God Yahweh is the true God, Listen to what I'm saying here. At least you can admit this. These are patterns. This is a type. Okay, this was not true worship. This was a type, and it represented something that was going to happen in the coming of Christ and other things that would happen. And so we've got to understand, what is all this about? This was a typical temple, not the real true temple in heaven. And this particular God got angry a lot. This God got sorry and repented a lot. This God was moved, and Moses talked him into all kinds of things. And this was a God that Moses saw face to face. But our God, no man has ever seen him. Nobody. Nobody. Our God never makes mistakes, and our God is love. But this God, he was angry all the time. There's got to be something going on here, friends, and here's the answer. Friends, Elohim is not some God that, is somehow special. El, and see, Elohim is plural for El. El is one of the ways. It came down in all the different nations different ways. I mean, Allah is the same word. It was in the Sumerian tablets, it was Enlil or Elu. And, Ilullah or Allah, it come down in different ways. This was El was Enlil. So who was Yahweh? Well, remember, this is the administration of angels. Yahweh was an angel, friend. And there certainly was some good parts to this God. Israel, by the time they started writing their understanding of what happened, this was only a couple of thousand years ago. Like Moses was 1300 BC. So that's, 3,300 years ago at the most. And remember that the original angels set up their kingdom on earth thousands of years before this. And there were two gods, or actually three with Ninhardsag, but Enlil and Enki were the two gods that the Bible talks about. And, down through all the nations, they were called Enki and Enlil. But Enki later on became known as Ea. You see, and that's why whenever the children of Israel, they ended up, they always used the word Enlil in there. They kind of mixed these two gods up. Remember, sometimes this God would get angry and sometimes he was benevolent. And that's because the angels have two sides. Enlil was very angry, but Yahweh had mercy. Okay, but whenever he would get mad, then it was like he would change to Enlil, and Enlil would be angry and he would rage, his wrath would rage, and but they only write about God as an administration of angels. This when Israel talks about God, they're not talking about the Father of heaven. See? So when Israel talks about God or writes about God, they're writing about that administration of angels that was on the earth. Remember when God told Moses who he was? Remember he sees the angel, and it was an angel, and the voice of Jehovah, or the voice of Yahweh, came out of this bush. And so Moses, well, who are you? Remember, this was completely, you see, today we're Christians and we've got the New Testament and we know who God is. We know he's our Father in heaven. We know he's love. Moses didn't know that. The world didn't know who God was at this time. So Moses, well, who are you? This is a revelation of God. And at this time, they didn't know God. It had never been revealed to them. God was revealed to mankind through Jesus Christ, friends. At this point in time, they were only being told what God wanted them to know by means of his angel, because the human beings on the earth at this time weren't ready to know God and his love. They rejected God. Remember, in the Garden of Eden, they rejected him. And they followed after the law of the knowledge of good and evil. They chose to try and get to God through their own stubborn pride. And they followed after the flesh. And so they couldn't see God. It was blinding to them. It was blinding light. It was love, and they didn't know love. They didn't understand love. So God sent down his angel. But inside the stuff that these angels were telling them was written mystical truths that later on God was going to explain meant the coming of Christ, which was the revelation of the God of love. But at this time, they didn't know who God was. So Moses said, "Who are you?" And God says, "Well, I am Iya." That's exactly what he said. Iya, Asher, Iya. I am Iya. That's Enki, friends. Enki became known as Iya down through the Akkadians, and it went on down into Israel and Canaanites, and they began to worship Enki as Iya. So by the time that Israel was writing the law and the covenant and so forth, and they saw this angel, they didn't know who this angel was. They just saw this big ship, this spaceship that was from another place. And these gods stepped out. They spoke to him face to face. They were just gods. They were just angels, messengers from God. And they began to express certain things to Moses and explain as much as they could. And they wrote it down in symbols. And so the people there, if you look at the symbols, the people wanted to worship a cow. And the people wanted a priesthood because they didn't want to they couldn't bear to have the Holy Spirit on earth at that time. So the Holy Spirit was pictured as a presence beyond the veil, beyond that area they couldn't understand, in that most holy place they didn't have access to yet. And so they made all of these carnal laws as a tutor that could one day lead mankind to the real truth. And so Enki and Enlil, or Enlil and Yahweh, they put them together in one kind of hodgepodge. Yahweh God, Yahweh Elohim, which was Enlil and Enki, the angels, the two angels and the two faces. Remember, you got the face of the bull and the face of the lion. And there was the good side of the angels and there was the bad side. And Enki always represented that part of God that was merciful and kind. But remember, God was also jealous and angry and wrathful. Remember, sometimes in the book of Chronicles and Kings, it talks about God sending deceptive spirits to mankind and deceiving them. And sometimes it says that he would send his wrath on the earth, and other times it would say that God was a deceiving spirit. At times, Yahweh was Enlil, God, and he would get angry and wipe the earth off the face of the map. Remember there where Elohim wanted to destroy mankind in the flood? See, he played that part, that side of it. He bore that face of the bull, Enlil, the El, the bull, the bell. And then at other times he played the merciful God. It was like good cop, bad cop. But it was the angels, friends. None of these Anunnaki were God. They were only angels. And they desired to peer into these things. They were telling mankind what Father in heaven told them to say. You see, they were just angels. They didn't know everything. They're just people like you and I from another planet. And so they were telling and teaching. They had advanced technologies, and they were trying to help mankind grow, and they had to encode and encrypt all this stuff. And they made priesthoods, and they wouldn't explain the higher truths unless you were initiated into these truths, friends. So I think I'll stop there, friends, today, and we'll leave it at that, because that's probably a lot for a lot of you to digest. But this is what happened back in the ancient days with the Israelites. They were given a type and a shadow of things to come, not the real truths. And they didn't understand who their God was. And that's why they called him Ea Asher Ea. I am Ea. But that's all they knew. Okay? And they saw him from both sides. And they wrote it down faithfully. So, friends, that's all I got to say today. This is David Vos, and I'm going to sign out, guys. You guys have a great day.